Welcome to a pre-modern set review, 4th edition. The 4th edition was the 10th set released for the game and the 4th base set. It was released in May 1995 and contained 378 cards. It was the first set to reprint cards from the expansions The Dark and Legends with white borders. This set was released about 3.5 years before I started playing. So let's take a look at the set, at the artworks, and at the impact for the pre-modern format. Let's start with the white cards. And as you can see, many cards of them are pretty famous from the old school era. It was like 3.5 years before I started playing with Urza Saga, and I'm not sure how many cards from the set we see in pre-modern these days, but I think it's a pretty nice and huge set. And it has some quite impactful cards in the format. So let's get a quick look at these cards. I know many of them from the old game Chandala, but I think the first playable card we have here is Yamageddon, which is a huge card, and it's pretty widely played in the format. We have seen various strategies like the Parfait deck, which got banned, take advantage of destroying all the lands. And nowadays, decks like Green-White Terrorgeddon or Cataclysm Oath taking advantage of this unfair card. Another interesting card is Balance, but as you might know, it's banned in the format, and I think it's the right thing to do to keep it banned, because it would be just some unfair games. It's allowed for a one-time play in the old school format, and even there it could easily warp a game. So let's continue here. First thing I've noticed is the Blessing, which seems like a very cool card. It costs double white and gives your creature the ability to behave like an Antuku Shade. I think it's a bit too slow and a bit too fair, because you're running into a removal spell if you try to enchant your creature with that. Yeah, the other white cards here seems just way too fair for pre-modern. Like here on the castle, you're spending 4 mana, and your untapped creatures get +0/+2 when they are not attacking. Here with the cycle of protections, we see some cards, mostly the cycle of protection red, which is played a lot in the format. Sly is one of the best decks, and even against goblins it has some play, so I think it's a pretty nice card to have. It comes later in the format with 7th edition and more, I guess, but it started all with the 4th edition here with a pretty nice artwork. And in addition, we've seen some of the other circles as a one-off in Enchantress sideboards, because they have the ability to just tutor them up with a card like the Green-White Shrine. Here the hidden card, which got banned due to his artwork and context from Wizards of the Coast, is still allowed in pre-modern. It's the card Crusade, and it's pretty impactful. It's a strong card in white weenie or blue-white weenie lists. So if you want to avoid this artwork, there is a possibility for you to play it from the 5th and 6th edition, which has a pretty badass angel there. And yeah, I lost sometimes the card. A really interesting card, I guess, is a Conversion, which costs 4 mana and counts like all mountains become basic plains. During your upkeep, you have to pay double white to destroy Conversion. I think it could be a cool card to log out a game against goblins or against Sly. It's a bit slow, but maybe I try it out sometime. So next one here is the Disenchant, which is pretty famous in the format. It's a strong card, and some decks even main deck it, like Blue-White Land still. Divine Transformation, it's just too cute. There are much better cards in the format which do a similar effect. So what do we have here? Great artwork from the Elder Landworm, but with 7 mana. And it has to block before it can even attack. It's not what we want to do here. We have a card like a Chroma. Okay. Let's continue. The Island Sanctuary is a pretty nice card I've seen in a Zour's Wording list. And I think it was a bit too cute, but on the other hand, I think the design space isn't reached yet. So this might be a good card later. Karma is a sweet card. For 4 mana, it's an enchantment which shoots 1 damage to each player for each swamp he or she controls in each upkeep. Yeah, it's pretty narrow, but not unplayable in the format. Okay, what do we have here? Kismet. All of target players' creatures, lands and artifacts come into play tapped. Pretty cool artwork. And I think it's a nice effect, but we have a much cheaper effect, which is similar, called Root Maze, I guess. It costs 1 green and is sometimes splashed in the stasis decks. Here we got the land tax, which got banned a few months ago. I really like that card, and I think the ban should be undone. And for that, the Scroll should be banned. Because the land tax is enabling some pretty fun strategies. Yeah, you see, this was exactly the first set in the pre-modern format, and for that there is like exactly the point where you have very strong cards like a land tax and very, very light cards like a Morale. For 3 mana, all attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. You can get that effect immediately with a Saga. Okay, Northern Paladin is interesting, but the problem is black is a color which is very aggressive. So if you got that down for 4 mana and then you need to spend mana, it won't get you anywhere. Here we are on the lighter side. Never saw banning in the format, to be honest. But now it's getting more and more interesting. It's the Savannah Lines, which is a nice threat in the blue-white weenie decks. I really lost some games against the line. And I like that it's not played in each blue-white deck, but it's pretty aggressive. And if you can back it up with the Mother of Runes, it will ship damage in pretty quickly. Okay, Sarah Angel, I've never saw it in the format. I play it in my old school deck and really like it. Spirit Link, it's a bit on the edge. It's a very strong card. I think it's still a delayed lifelink, so you can stack more Spirit Links on a creature. You can even use it to get down the speed from an opponent creature. And I saw it as a one-off in the Seal Chantress sideboard. I think it's a bit too fair, but an interesting card anyway. And here one of the pillars in the format, Souls to Plowshares, with a very iconic artwork. In the pre-modern format you have the Ice Age artwork pretty often, but I really like this artwork. So let's continue here. This is all too fair, but it has some nice artworks. The White Knight is a card on my radar. It seems pretty cool, but as I mentioned, black is massively underplayed in the format, and with Scourge we got the Silver Knight, which got protection red, which is much stronger in the format. Another pillar of the format is the Wrath of God. It's got out of favor lately, and you see more and more often a split with humility, because some creatures are so impactful when they hit the battlefield that just wiping them afterwards is not enough. And let's continue with blue here. Cool cards, but way too fair. It's like 5 mana, 4/4 flying. You've lost the game at that point, and you don't want to animate an artifact for 4 mana. There are better ways to do it, like a Khan. The Apprentice Wizard is interesting card, because it can net you 2 colorless mana, but it's way too slow in the format. But I like to play it in Chandala back then. A Blue Blast is pretty often seen in combination with the Hydroblast from Ice Age. It's a strong sideboard card. You can get some play against Light or Goblins. Yeah, Control Magic, I've never seen it in the format, but I'm a fan of it, to be honest. I think it could be pretty cool to get an opposing Terravor or something. So here we reach the Counterspell, which is still one of the pillars in the format. Like almost every blue deck plays the Counterspell, from blue-white Landstill to 4-color control to Dreadnought. And it's still one of the best counterspells in the format. On situation, a Null or one of the Blast might be better, but it's so strong. I've seen the Energy Flux like 2 or 3 times, forcing every player to pay 2 colorless mana for each artifact in his upkeep, but I think it's just too fair to get one of your 15 sideboard slots. So let's continue here. I think that's not playable at all. This seems like a nice card, because you can play it for like 1 blue and tap creatures without flying. But all in all, it's just 2 mana intense to be a good control strategy. And I think due to the fact that every deck is running some amount of enchantment removal, it's not what you want to do in the format. The Ghost Ship is a super cool artwork, but not playable. Hercule's Recall. Okay, I have to admit, I did not know it was in the format until now. It's a pretty cool card, but on the other hand, the decks where it would shine are so seldom played, like Mud or a blue-red Tinker Welder variant, that I don't think you can really take advantage of that. But I need to have it on my radar now. Maybe if I'm searching for the right card, it can help me. Okay, 2 blue. You gain 1 life each time a forest controlled by target opponent becomes tapped. It seems like a nice card, but I mean, the green decks are mostly elves and Terravor, and there you might net like 2 to 4 life, and you gotta overrun. Lord of Atlantis is played in the blue or just blue-green Merfolk lists, but it's a pretty niche deck. I've thought like 2 or 3 times, and it was maybe tier 4. It was nice to see the fish, but there are not many good Merfolks in the format. I think the best is due to the errata, a waterfront bouncer from Mercadian Masks. but badass artwork. Really love it. Okay, let's flip over these. Mana Short is a great card. It's sometimes played in the sideboards, mostly in the Parallax Replenish list, because you can catch it with a Cunning Wish there. Okay, Mind Bomb. 4 mana. As I saw it some months ago, I was like, okay, 4 mana, 4/4, and you have to pay 1 blue. It's decent, but it's just 4 mana for 1. You can't justify that and put it in your deck. Target land becomes any basic land type of your choice. Pirate ship. No. Nothing we need here for the format. Power Sink is a nice counterspell. I know that from Wizard Saga, and I played it for like 2 times, I guess. The cool thing is it's scaling. Like you can pay 4 mana, or you can even pay 2 mana, use it as a force spike, or you can, in the late game, pay it for a huge amount and just counter the spell, because your opponent can't pay for it. And the nice thing is that if the opponent does not pay, he needs to tap all his mana. So you can, if you want to deploy something in your own turn, you can just use it. And I think it's a bit underplayed, because it's in the shadow of a original counterspell or Daze and Foil, Mana Leak, Prohibit. Yeah, the Prodigal Sorcerer. That's a pretty cool card. And I played it for some games in a mono blue wizard deck with Static Orb and Opposition. It's really funny, but it's a bit too fair. There are similar wizards doing that, but yeah, it's a bit too fair for the format. So let's continue here. Sinbad is interesting. Draw a card. And if it's not land, discard it. I think it's a bit slow and a bit too fair, but someday in a tier 3 or 4 deck could be a type of card advantage. Okay, what do we have here? Stasis is a very well-known deck, and it's widely played in the format. So it's not like a metagame share of 10% or something, but you have to keep it on your radar, because it will be played. I played it on my own. It's a really cool control deck, because you just play all the spells where you can bounce your own islands, like Gush or Thwart, and you're getting damage in with the Black Vice. Really like this card and the artwork. Okay, what do we have here? Spell Blast. Counter target spell. X is the casting cost of the target spell. Yeah, it's a bit too fair, and it's quite similar to the Power Sink. I think due to the Mox in the format and due to fast mana, it's not playable. I remembered Sunken City from my childhood. It was another way to pump your Merfolk creatures. You have to pay 2 in your upkeep or it's destroyed. Okay, let's take a look here. I've seen Unstable Mutation in the Seal Chantress deck list. Wasn't really a fan of it, but yeah, it's a cool card. Bit too fair, I guess. Unsummon is sometimes played in the Madness decks, but I haven't seen it for a long time. Volcanic Eruption. 3 blue plus X. Destroys X target mountains. Volcanic Eruption deals 1 damage to each creature and player for each mountain. Yeah, that's a nice niche card, but it's just too fair. It's like, even if you want to land it against Sly or Goblins, Sly could just sacrifice their mountains for Fire Blast, and each of these decks can just Red Blast it for 1 mana. Plus, you won't have the time to do that. Okay, these are all pretty vanilla. Now it's getting interesting again. Animate Dead is a pretty strong card played in Reanimator decks and in decks like, I guess, the combo decks interacting with the graveyard. I'm not really sure if they run it, but yeah, it's a pillar of the format. Reanimator is not often seen because it's a pretty fair deck, but a cool card to have in the format anyway. Okay, Ashes to Ashes. Exile 2 target non-artifact creatures and you get 5 damage. It's just too fair, I guess. But Bad Moon is a nice black card, which is played in the mono black aggro decks, and it's pretty cool. It's like the Crusade, a bit easier to cast because just 1 black, but it's a strong card to have around, and you even have it with another artwork, I guess from 5th edition. Okay, altogether, 4th edition. Keep in mind that it's just my own opinion. I would really like to hear what you are saying about the edition, about my rating. But on the flavor, I will give the set 2 of 5 anvils. Because it's, yeah, it just feels like a reprint set. I'm not feeling much if I saw the artworks, and it's like there is not a special style in the set. It's like everything is there, and I don't know. Sometimes if I saw one of these artworks, I couldn't say it's from this or from this set because they are so generic. But sometimes there are very cool artworks like Lightning Bolt, Armageddon, Swords to Plowshares. And for that, I will give the set in Factor Memories 3 of 5 anvils. I started with Urza Saga, as I mentioned before, but we got some of these cards around back then, and I played them in Chandala. So if this wasn't, there would be like, I guess, 1 or 2 anvils, but due to the fact these artworks and cards were in Chandala, I give 3 from 5 anvils. The impact for the format with the first pre-modern set for me is like 4 of 5 anvils. We have so strong cards with Swords to Plowshares, Lightning Bolt, Armageddon, that yes, the format would look very different without these cards. And I think a card like Swords to Plowshares or Lightning Bolt is so impactful that we got here 4 or 5 anvils. The artworks are not really my thing because they are just too random for me. But it's not like you have a setting there in like in the later sets where you just see the card and that's from the Urza block, that's from Visions. But yeah, some artworks are pretty cool and great artists participated there, that I will give 3 of 5 anvils. What do you think? What are your memories of 4th edition from 1995 and how would you rate it? Please comment.